I'd like to take us on a little journey this morning. A little different probably from the sermons you're used to, about a subject that may be difficult to talk about. We read together the story of doubting Thomas, now believing Thomas. Has anyone ever heard a sermon on doubting Thomas before? This is not that sermon. And Dylan thankfully read for us the passage on the year of Jubilee, where you got to give back all your stuff, and if people are enslaved, they have to be set free, and if you bought things, you have to give it back, and it's this great leveling of the playing field where every 7 years or every 49 years or so, everybody's got to give back all their stuff so you can't take advantage of each other. Has anyone ever heard a pastor preach on the year of Jubilee before? 2. Okay. So you don't have any expectations. This is not that sermon either. And as you have guessed from the children's moments, I would like to talk about something much more dangerous and much more beautiful. I'd like to talk about mental illness. It does connect to the passage, I promise. Specifically, I want to talk about our doubt or our belief in people who have mental illness and the emotional poverty or wealth that we all bring to the table. I speak particularly about depression because that's what I'm most familiar with. And I also speak particularly about Jesus, not because everyone knows him or needs to know him the same way that I do, but because he's the one that I'm most familiar with. And hopefully my particulars remind me of your particulars and the particulars within the people that you love. We all know someone with mental illness. So come with me on this journey. There are acres and acres of God through which I have not yet walked. But in the forests and fields of my short, mysterious life, I have found that which is melancholy, in shades of human and shades divine, some of which may look familiar. These are the God I can speak of because I have seen them. Depression is a 4-letter word. In the past, mentioning mental illness in church was like saying the F word from the pulpit. Today is a new day, and I want to swear in church. I want to say out loud that we, as children and ministers of God, in our schools, at churches, at our jobs, we suffer from depression. And the structures in society around us are often unfriendly. I was on a walk with a friend this week, and she was reflecting about this crazy American society we find ourselves in. She wondered out loud why it is that the measure of success in our society is to not need anyone. We work so hard at work so that we're never financially dependent on anyone. We read self-help books so that we never have to share our stuff with another person. And we mark a real man as one who never cries in public, and a real woman as one who has her life together enough to selflessly take care of her family. Ironic. When Jesus had his mental breakdown just before he died, he was so nervous that he sweat blood, so out of control of his emotions that he couldn't sleep, but he prayed in the garden all night. And the thing that concerned him the most was that his friends couldn't stay awake with him. The people he needed weren't there. At that moment, they weren't feeling with him what he was feeling. My friend from the walk, she is a wise person. She suffers from anxiety, and she needs me, and I need her. And that doesn't make us weak. It makes us real. Now, after Jesus had gone through the events of last week, and thankfully some of his friends were there, John stuck around, his mother was there, the surprise at the end of the week was that he came back to life. Nobody expected it. And I think this is where doubting Thomas comes in to teach us about change. You see, when the disciples were with Jesus when he was alive, they thought he could never die. Things would always stay the same. Things would always be the way that they were. When Jesus told them he had to die at the hands of the Pharisees, Peter said, "Certainly not, Lord. You could never do that. Things could never be any different than they are right now." But then when Jesus did die, they again thought, just like Thomas said, that he would always be dead. Things would always be exactly the way they were at that moment. Thomas says, "Unless I see the nail marks in his palm and put my finger in his hands inside, I will not believe it." We always think that our current state is going to last forever, ignoring the thousands of changes in the current state that we always are going through. When things are good, we think they'll stay that way forever. When things are bad, we think they'll never change. The wonderful thing is that Jesus doesn't fault us for this. He walks right into our little locked room of consistency and proves that change is real. Now, it's gross to stick your finger in someone else's wound. This is a very gross story from the Bible. But Thomas reached out and experienced the next stage of the journey in a manner that was visceral and bloody and warm and physically unforgettable. In the same way, mental illness reaches out its hand and proves to us that the world is always at change and that we are not always in control. The blood and warmth of that reality is as familiar as the hand of Jesus was to the friend who had known him so well. At that moment, Thomas and the disciples were all on equal ground. Belief and doubt melted away into a common experience of the particular proven newness of that moment in history. God knows we need to be on level ground, and this is where the year of Jubilee comes in. The year of Jubilee is God's great leveling. It's not wrong to be on the mountaintop of wealth, and it's not wrong to be in the valley of poverty. It's wrong to never walk on level ground and look each other in the eye. Now, the poor love the year of Jubilee. Everything that they had lost to the rich, they get back. But guess who hates the year of Jubilee? The rich. There's a book by Nancy Eastland. It's called The Disabled God. And in it, she describes people without disabilities, people who can walk normally, as the, quote, temporarily able-bodied. So she's disabled, and we are all the temporarily able-bodied, which I think is wise. And those who have never seen depression or mental illness are only temporarily in control of their emotions. It could change at any time. And thankfully, for those who are affected by mental illness, they could get better at any time too. Depression is the year of Jubilee for the rich. The mountains are brought low and the valleys are uplifted and nothing makes sense. And it's beautiful if you're in the valley and devastating if you're on the mountain. And from my current morally neutral mountain of sanity, I have been toppled by the year of Jubilee many times. It topples us. It brings us back to level ground where we can look those we love in the eye and say, I'm just like you, and I'm not sorry for it. And whether it's caused by a chemical imbalance or painful circumstances, depression is the great leveling of the playing field. God sends the rain on the good and the bad. We're not depressed because we did something wrong. We're not happy because we're perfect. It's just that we can never really count on our emotions to play along. In the economy of depression, I have been in severe poverty and extraordinary wealth. I don't ever want to be depressed again, but I understand that I could, and I've found that God never wastes a hurt. For me, the melancholy has been the walkway to the creative, that dangerous artistic spark who weaves her way through our sermons, the perfect word, the word that wouldn't be living if it weren't spoken with the pain in your throat. The tongue that speaks from pain may lisp truth, but it whisks away loneliness from the ears of the friend who needs it. Depression is a poverty of control, the inability to save face, to control our emotions, to rise above, all washed away by a flood of brain chemicals. And God says, you don't need to save face. Your face already looks like mine. You don't need control. Control is a small daily dose of poison. And rise above, where would you go when I walk on the earth below? Below, here in the basement and alehouses of the tears of those who call you pastor, mom, friend, there is where life begins. The reality that laughing and crying can exist in the same day, in the same thought. There, in the valley of decision, saving face is sacrificing those who don't have that luxury, and airing out just our clean laundry and hiding the dirty is cheating those we love out of the beauty of a half-finished work of art. A society that discriminates against mental illness seems so powerful, like the structures of discrimination will last forever. But do you know that you will outlive this society? Do you know that? When the corporations stop discriminating, when healthcare covers the trouble of both body and mind, when influenza and bipolar are in the same category in the mind of everyone we talk to. After the institutions of power have been laid low, your eternal soul will still be alive. You'll outlive it. But behind those mortal institutional walls that seem so impenetrable are immortal people, people whose souls will live on with all of us. And your openness about the instability of your own emotion can be the key to opening others up. Secretaries who hide their sons' depression, bishops that almost didn't make it through sophomore year because of the stress, managers who wish they could talk to someone about the days they feel helpless and lifeless, all saving face but losing life until you come along. There's a psychologist who studies education, and he warns teachers against the tendency to be too formal and too professional in the classroom, when what kids really need is an egalitarian community where teaching and learning take place in an environment of justice. He says this, the psychologist on education. He says, quote, "Formalism is psychologically cheap." Formalism is psychologically cheap. It doesn't cost the educator very much, and it doesn't yield much for the student. Formalism, this holy professionalism, is cheap, but real relationship with your students, with your fellow folks in the congregation, real relationship is costly. Openness may cost us a promotion, a second date, or the respect of the judgmental. In truth, honest relationships will cost us everything. But openness might also give us what we genuinely need, a community of understanding, of level ground. Openness. Christians approved by God can suffer from depression and mental illness, and the structures we serve don't serve us well. And only our naked openness will shock the system enough to quake for love for us, and for us to admit that we need God, and we need each other, and that's not codependence, that's interdependence. I want to share a thought with you that I read last semester and that has been profoundly affecting me ever since, and I'll close with this. Jesus, after his resurrection, would have been disabled. Jesus, after the resurrection, would have been disabled. When he comes to see Thomas and the disciples, he still has the wounds after the resurrection. All of his glory, and his feet would have still had holes in them and been mangled. He probably would have limped. And his side, it probably would have been still hard to breathe, and he probably would not have been able to hold a pen or to open a door handle without pain, because after the resurrection, he still had the holes. This is not the Good Friday God who we mourn. This is the resurrected Jesus, the one who still, to this very day, is very wounded and very much alive. The life of the resurrected believer is not one where there are no wounds. It's not one where we have complete control over every emotion, where there's no pain and no change. No. This life is the one where we openly hold out both our wounds and our surprise resurrections to those closest to us, so that they can touch them and believe in us.